champion. Welcome, Danny Batten.
Fucking number one.
You win.
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 74, and tonight we're going to be, as ever, talking the latest MMA and boxing news, plus of course last night's UFC fight night, including some top level performances. Plus, of course, we will indeed be talking to another top guest from the fight world, which I'm very much looking forward to. It's going to be a good one. But as ever, you can get this show and all the other shows which A.C.E Podcast Nation produces, featuring top guests, expert analysts and more in video format at youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. And if you prefer your podcasts in audio format, then you can get them at every podcast platform in the world, pretty much. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation, and there's over 400 shows on a variety of subjects, featuring some top names and some really interesting subject matter. So I urge you, have a look, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click that bell for notifications, helps us out a lot, and spread the word, as it were. But with no further ado, let's bring in the man of the hour. First and foremost, joining me as ever, he is former Cage Warriors champion, some would say a legend of the UK MMA fight scene. It is Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend. I've changed that to some would say a legend.
Yeah, I'm not so happy about that.
Giving you a bit of a downgrade from the usual legendary status. Couple of weeks' time, it'll just be like veteran fighter of the UK MMA scene, and then a few weeks after that, it'll just be some guy who used to fight, and be interesting, mate. But how are you, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. We had another interesting weekend. You know, UFC are still pumping out some awesome matchups. There's some really interesting performances and some great knockouts as well, which is always good to see.
Yeah, some interesting ones, mate. You don't get too many spinning elbow knockouts in main events, no less. So that was interesting. We'll touch on the boxing results a bit later on. Not going to be able to talk about it in too much detail because I haven't had a chance to watch it. I don't know if you've seen any of it, mate, but it just is what it is. There's only so much time. There's only so many hours in the day, mate.
Yeah, I didn't really get to follow much with the boxing. But it is something that I will watch, but I just have to do it when time allows.
Indeed, mate. We've got to focus on the stuff which we're going to talk about the most. But on that note, joining us today, another fantastic guest from the fight world. He's higher level MMA founder, owner and head coach, former Cage Warriors fighter in his own right. It is Mr. James Doolan. Welcome, James. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having us.
Indeed, I'm very pleased to have another Celt on the show. I like it when we outnumber Danny. I feel at home, more comfortable. I like it when we have the Welsh fighters on, because that just makes me feel all cozy and warm inside. But yeah, just having another Celt on is just as good. But how are you, James? Anyway, are you all good?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Just getting on with stuff the same as everybody else, I think. But I'm good.
Yeah, it's been a weird year, 18 months, hasn't it? It's unprecedented, and I suppose that could kind of start us off. I suppose, like, as a coach who's got guys in, you know, the UFC and Cage Warriors, a lot of professional fighters, like, what has it been like this last year, you know, training fighters throughout COVID and still trying to prepare for fights and stuff, big fights as well?
It's been weird. It's not really been a process I've enjoyed, to be honest. It's given me the chance to work a lot of one-on-one with guys, or in really small groups with a couple training partners and stuff like that. But I think our gym and our kind of system at the gym is built on having a really big team and having everybody in under the same roof at the same time, just pushing each other and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of been lost a lot. So it's been weird, man, but we've kind of made the best of it and just got on with it as best as we could, the same as everyone else.
Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? It's like, it's something which just can't be helped. It's completely taken out of your hands, and like, I've spoken to Danny a lot about, when you're told the gyms were closed, particularly early on in that lockdown, before professionals were kind of given the green light to train and to prepare for fights and stuff like that. When it was all completely locked down in that initial one, it's got to be frustrating for you guys, because it's completely out of your hands. It's nothing, it's not even a case of you guys kind of decided, we're going to close down because it's a bit, it's a bit ropey or it's a bit dodgy. You're just told, and that's it. And I just feel like that's got to be quite frustrating, I suppose is the best word. What's the sort of the best thing from training fighters now, coming into where they're opening everything up, and that side of it, like for your team and for you guys? Is it just the bigger teams and being able to sort of get everyone in there together, or is there some other sides to it?
It's probably just having everybody back in the gym, to be honest. There's a weird thing about gyms, that certain gyms more than others, but there's a process where guys come in and they need to be joking around with guys, and they need to be getting the piss ripped at them, and they need to be getting, they need to be getting slagged off and everything else. And it just makes everything more fun that way. Like, training's more fun. They push themselves harder and stuff like that. When we were doing the camps during lockdown, and we're in like a pretty big space, and there's like me, a fighter, and 2 training partners. So it's just, it felt almost quite sterile. Do you know what I mean? It was just like it was just so business-like, certain things, that it just wasn't the same. Where when you're used to coming in and your whole team's around you and you're just ripping the piss out of each other, but the work's still getting done. It's less obvious that you're doing the work, I think, even though the work is still getting done. But it's just seeing everybody, man, and you're just so used to seeing the certain people 5-6 times a week. You know what's going on in their life and stuff like that, and when they take that away from you, it kind of throws everyone off a wee bit. Just breaks a routine that you're used to. Yeah,
like Danny, you've talked about the banter which goes around in your with your team and in BST and stuff like that, and how important it is. It's not just in terms of everyone feeling comfortable, everyone keeping up to date on everything which is going on and stuff, but it's that motivation and keeping everyone on their toes, keeping everyone sharp. That banter goes a long way, and I think sometimes maybe from the outside that is underappreciated, how much influence that sort of thing does have on the general atmosphere and feeling around the camps.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just part of what you get accustomed to for the normality, if you will. And our gym, possibly more than any other, is really banter orientated. There's a lot of piss taking going on and what have you. But that said, we are very, very serious when we get on the mats and get in the cage and we're doing our techniques and drilling and doing our sparring. We get very, very serious, don't get me wrong. But yeah, part of what helps the group congeal and have that togetherness is all through the banter. And yeah, it was a really disrupted time, I suppose, is the only way to say it. And not only that, there's other knock-on effects such as financial as well. It was very, very hard on some of the younger coaches that we have at the gym. They relied solely on their coaching wage, and obviously their positions were suddenly not there overnight. It was a very, very difficult process and confusing time for fighters as well. As pro fighters, everyone was not too sure when they're going to get a fight and get their fight purse, because some of them rely on that to help get by financially. Nothing was happening. And regards the amateurs was null and voided. There was just nothing for them, especially with promotions. It's only the biggest promotions that are able to ignite themselves back into activity, with UFC, Cage Warriors, and Bellator a little bit further down the line. But a lot of these shows all stopped as well. There's a big knock-on effect throughout. But it's the survival of the fittest, and James is still there with his team, and everything's opening up now. There was a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're coming through it now.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I think, like I was saying about the frustration, I think that's gonna, just for someone like me from the outside, I found it frustrating just as a fan, and talking to you and see it, feeling how frustrated you were. So I can only imagine what it's like, sort of in that bubble. James, have you got any fighters within your sort of ranks who maybe it didn't bother them too much to to train in that small groups, and because you hear about some fighters, obviously the one which springs to mind is kind of like Tony Ferguson, Max Holloway, who kind of recently have said they do very little sparring and they do a lot of training on their own. Do you have any or many fighters who are as comfortable training alone or in small groups as opposed to in those big groups? Oh, you've gone quiet again there, mate. I don't know what.
Better?
Yeah.
That's it.
Cool. I think there's one or two who maybe benefit from like individual attention and stuff like that. But generally, I think that they're better off in the group format, and we can time manage how much time guys are getting and stuff like that. There's one or two guys I think, like Mark Ewan, who ended up being like a main sparring partner for a couple of fights with Danny Henry for Fight Island, and then Stevie McIntosh a couple of times. So he was like one of our better amateur guys, but he's just about to turn pro. So he's benefited from getting in wee groups and stuff like that. But generally, I think it's been hard work for a lot of them.
100%, mate. So let's move away from COVID. And before we kind of talk about some of the fighters on your books, James, I would like to talk a bit about you and your sort of, the fighting which you did yourself and stuff. Obviously, you're a very accomplished fighter in many different arts. But first and foremost, back to the start. How old were you and how did you get into combat sports and MMA?
I was eight years old, I think. I'd been getting bullied at school and my parents took me to a karate class. It was like the closest one to my house type of thing. Shotokan karate. There wasn't much about. This was like 86 maybe, 87. So started in karate, but by the time I was 11, I knew that Shotokan karate wasn't the answer I was looking for. I didn't think I was going to be winning any confrontations using it. I'd seen it for what it was, and just started looking about at different stuff. But the only other option I had back then was kind of boxing, which led me into kickboxing, and I just went like a very natural path that most of the guys my age and like Danny's age went. It was like traditional martial arts, kind of coming through into maybe the more realistic traditional stuff like Muay Thai, and then adding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu eventually when MMA came about. But it was Shotokan karate. I was there, I think it was like a junior black belt and stuff before I moved on. Started at a boxing club, then kickboxing, and then Muay Thai.
I find that really interesting, and one of the questions, which is a very personal question from my point of view, but like I got three boys, basically three teenagers, but particularly the older one who's 16 and the youngest one who's 12 now, I want them to do some MMA training, and actually Richard Shaw works at their school, and I kind of want to try and get them doing just basics and training up with him. And my wife is a bit against this. She thinks it'll encourage them to fight and all that's the usual arguments basically. And I ask our guests, particularly if they're coaches, and I asked Danny, like, if you were me, what would you say to kind of explain the benefits of those teenagers doing that?
To be honest, I think every kid should train in martial arts. I think it should be part of the school kind of curriculum. I think the fact you've got access to Richard Shaw in the school is an amazing thing. I wish they had something like that in Scotland, to be honest, man. And Danny will tell you this as well, the vast majority of people that get into martial arts will never compete. They'll never go on to fight. I think at our gym we've got maybe 110 students or something and 25 fighters. So I would definitely get them into it. Man, I've got three boys as well. 14 due to turn 15, 12 and 2. And all of them train. I don't think any of them will go on to compete, maybe the youngest one, but it's important for me that they train, so they start messing about at a young age and just play about. But I think every kid should be involved in martial arts. I know a lot of other countries have it in schools and stuff like that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
the benefits of it's massive.
Yeah, and I think like this is like the point which everyone jumps to is obviously self-defense, but I think for me there's a lot of other aspects to it, like just general fitness, discipline, the mental health aspects of it, and the positive side of that. Like, Danny, I know we've touched on this a little bit before, me and you, but like, is there anything which you would add to sort of what James has said and what I've just said there, just about the other side of it? You know, not necessarily self-defense, but the other aspects of the benefits of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was listening to James, I agree with a lot of what James says. I think most kids should be involved in some way, and bringing it into schools, I think, would be a huge benefit, because it forces the kids into a social mix, for one. You're naturally going to have, pecking orders, and I actually think it makes you fight less by being well equipped, just in case confrontations arises, and also with the discipline side of things as well. I think in classrooms now there's such a lack of control for teachers over their students, but I think when you're doing it martial arts orientated way, I don't know, it's almost like the coach would have some kind of I don't know, more authority over the students in that class format, and I just think that would be really good for kids of any age, to be honest. Something that I've always talked about amongst close friends and family is that back many years ago, I used to do a 2-year service in the military. I think it was from the age of 16 to 18. I can't remember exactly what the age terms are now. But I think something like that would be fantastic to be brought back in. I don't know why it got taken out or how hard it would be to reintroduce something like that. But I think that I'll put a lot of students, young kids, coming up to leaving school, it'll put them on a straight and narrow if they was going to deter or sidetrack and get into trouble. I just think something like that would be really, really good. But of course, we don't have that 2-year service with regards to military training or anything like that. So martial arts, I think, could be a good way of perhaps helping the kids in school formats and being social, and I don't know, getting on the right path, I suppose, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, mate, and I think you've both made some great points, which I'm going to take straight to my wife this evening. Thank you for that. But also, I agree with you, Danny, about the military service as well. I think it should be compulsory. Even just 2 years. I think there's so much benefits to it that I don't know. Especially when you look around the world and the things you read in the newspapers, mate. Like, I feel like every other day I'm reading about a kid in the UK somewhere who's of no age at all, 11, 12 or whatever, and they've been stabbed or beaten up or shot or, just something horrific. And I just feel like if it's not addressed as a whole nation and kind of we get back to some sort of values in terms of how the population generally and as a whole bring up their kids and the values that they install in those kids, I just can't see it getting better. And in some ways, I'm glad that my kids are the age they're at now, and they're not younger, because I do worry. As parents do, you do worry, but you can only do your best, as it were, mate. James, obviously, so you fought in various promotions. I think I'm right in saying that you fought in, as well as MMA, you fought in other martial arts as well as a competitor.
Yep.
Your MMA record I've got down as 17-9-2, which is a pretty good record. Your last fight in 2013 was with Cage Warriors.
Yep.
I asked Danny this a lot, but I'm going to ask you. Do you have a price in mind that you would make a comeback fight to knock out Jake Paul for me?
I'll do it for nothing. I'm easy.
Like it. Yeah, I think. Did you finish for a particular reason, like injury or anything like that, or?
Nobody's asked me this before, actually, but there was a couple of reasons. One was I had it in my head once I struggled to beat domestic level guys, I was done.
Okay.
one of my earlier goals was to be like the best guy at my weight in the UK, and I went on a little run at Cage Gladiators, which was a big show at the time. I won the bantamweight title there and defended it 3 times against good fighters. And then at this time, my gym was growing, so I was coaching full time. Danny will tell you how hard this is to fight yourself and coach. So near the end, I was coaching. I had Stevie Ray coming up at Cage Warriors. I had Martin Delaney, who's like a European ranked lightweight. I had Graham Turner at Cage Warriors, who went to fight for the title there, and I had Joanne Calderwood, who was ranked number 2 in the world as a strawweight, just fighting in Invicta, and went on to sign the UFC. So the way I coach, especially with the guys, is quite hands-on. So I'm spending maybe an hour a day with these guys, and then the rest of my students, and then try to fit my own training in. So it just came down to a question of, do I want to be like a world-class competitor or a world-class coach? And the only reason I started competing was to get better at coaching. So it was no contest for us. I had to focus on the coaching, I suppose. I think if I'd been a bit more selfish and stuff, I could have fought on for a wee bit longer. Some of the losses I had maybe would have been changed. But that show, actually, Joanne fought on the same shows as I went out and fought. I got put on 3rd, I think. Lost to James Pennington, had a bit of a sore face, and then came out later on and had to corner her while she fought ranked number 8 in the world, Sally Krumdiak, I think it was. But that was it pretty much. I didn't want to be just an average guy in the UK. I dropped a couple of iffy decisions to UK guys, but that was the first time I'd been stopped off a UK guy.
Okay. And
then just the workload with the coaching was starting to catch up with us.
Yeah, that sounds brutal. I gotta say that the amount of hours. This is like we said earlier on when talking about trying to watch stuff. There's only so many hours in the day, and if you're coaching, and obviously, like from what I know of and what Danny has said about you, like you're one of the best coaches in Europe, if not the world, and to be that, you've got to have the dedication and be able to put the hours in to get there and to do that and to continue that and get better. So I can imagine that must have been quite difficult to balance the two. In terms of your fighting career, what was maybe like your top 2 or 3 career moments like for you? Whether it's favourite fights or a moment or a knockout or whatever it may be, what sticks out for you?
I know one of them that was his highlight, and that would have been beating Lee Remedios.
Lucky Lee.
That would have been, to be honest, because when I was coming up, he was a big name. I think he'd been in a documentary and stuff like that, and I think he was regarded as one of the best featherweights in Europe for a while. So when he dropped into bantamweight, I was kind of happy to fight him, to be honest. And then he came to Cage Gladiators and it was a title defence. I was quite nervous about that fight just because of his reputation, and because I knew he'd been quite a big featherweight, dropping to bantam, and it was a good fight for me. It was at the Olympia in Liverpool, and I knocked him out in the second round. So that was definitely the one that stood out, just because it was Lee and he was like a famous troll at the time.
He
still is a troll, man.
But he was one of the best. He was so good at getting under people's skin. And what a lot of people don't know about Lee is he's a pretty intelligent guy. So you start bantering with him, and he can just twist you up. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He's got some awesome comebacks, and I never got involved with that side of it with him. But there was natural rivalry between me and Lee Remedios. When I noticed that you had beaten him, I thought, I've got to mention this on the podcast. It's a little satisfaction. So, did you have game plan for Lee Remedios? Did it go pretty much how you wanted it to go, or was it a case of just stepping in, feeling out wherever it may go?
I think I'd actually trained with him at Quantum Gym.
Right.
Once, but we just grappled. And he was a better wrestler than me at the time. So my plan was just to keep everything nice and long, and try and pick him off with strikes on the way in. I can't remember. It was a head kick eventually I got him with, but it had been set up with just like jabs and stuff. It did have me in a little bit of trouble. I had to escape a triangle at one point. I think he took me down and I swept him. and I've come up into a triangle and managed to kind of escape it. And I'm pretty sure at that point I knew that I was going to beat him. I could feel it in him. Like, I was like, that's his shot. That was his window of opportunity. And then after that, when I started hitting him, I knew the writing was on the wall after that, to be honest. But I kicked him. I think I set it up with like a wee fake and kicked him in the neck, and then finished with strikes. But I knew I wanted to avoid him holding me against the fence and stuff like that, because he's a bit more physical than me.
I did one of my earliest, one of the first episodes of my Unscripted Uncensored podcast, which I do, was with Lee. And actually, I think that's how me and Danny came across each other initially, was that I did that show with Lee. Well, I spoke to Lee for about 2.5 hours, and it felt like an hour. It just went by so fast. We covered so many different subjects, some controversial subjects. But you're right, Danny. One of the things which stuck out for me is he's not like what you would say is like a stereotypical fighter. Like, he's very, very intelligent, very well spoken, very very clever guy, and that really stuck out for me. So it's interesting hearing you guys like talk about your memories of him, because obviously I know him in a different way, like a different line, a different away from fighting completely. Is there any other moments, James, which kind of stick out for you through your fighting career?
The little run up at the girl at Omac, probably when it was Cage Gladiators. Back then, it was on ITV4, so it had like a good stable of fighters where all the Calbon guys were coming through. So Terry Eaton was there, Paul Sass was there, and so that was good. It was risky for me going to Liverpool and fighting, because I'd been fighting a lot in Glasgow and stuff, but I went there and I had to fight with a guy called Jay McGuinness to win the title, and I think they brought me in thinking he was going to beat me, to be honest. Paul Sass cornered him, and I think the guy sold about £7,000 worth of tickets. He's a popular kid in Liverpool. And I remember going into the promoter's office to get paid before I left to drive back up to Scotland, and somebody had been in to get his ticket commission, and his ticket commission was far more than what I was getting paid for the fight. And then I went back there, and I defended against Lee. I defended against Von Lee, who was Von Harvey at the time, and I defended against Dino Gambitesa as well. So that little run, they're all legit, very good fighters. So that week, I ended up kind of really enjoying going to Liverpool and just fighting there, to be honest. But that and getting the opportunity to fight in Japan, I think, was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I've had some experiences in Japan, and I mean, I've enjoyed them for their unique experience each time. But my goodness, they just seem to make everything go against you there. That we was getting knocks on our door at all strange times. They wasn't clear about anything that was going to be happening. Nothing was properly structured. I don't know. We felt like we was getting pulled from pillar to post. They wanted to do interviews in between my weight cut. I didn't have such a relishing experience out there. As much as I still look at it with fond memories, don't get me wrong, but I just felt like they're stacking so many things against me. And each time I was out there on short notice. I just wondered how you saw your experience out there.
I was the same, mate. I was short notice, so that straight away that stacks the cards against you. I was going to go and corner Paul McVeigh. He was going to fight. And Ian Dean messaged me just saying that they had a gap at bantamweight if I wanted to take it. I never made bantamweight up to that point. I'd been fighting at featherweight, but I wasn't big at featherweight, so I kind of jumped at the chance, to be honest. But I think I had about 10 days, and then I've arrived in Japan. It wasn't even 24 hours before the weigh-in. It was like 16 hours before the weigh-in. I was 67.6 kilos, so to get down to 61, we had no bathtub in the hotel. We weren't allowed in the saunas because our corner guys had tattoos.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So they just, I don't know if it was on purpose or whatever, but we sweated it out pretty much. But it was the most miserable 16 hours of my life. There was some stipulations in the contract as well that if I didn't make the weight, I was going to be responsible for my purse, the flights, the hotel, and my opponent's purse. So it came to about maybe £11,000.
Right.
And at this point, I don't even think I had £1,000 in the bank. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, I'll definitely make the weight. I'll make the weight.
You'll cut something off if you
the
have to.
fight, yeah, it was bad, man. I think I passed out a couple of times and stuff, but I eventually made it. And then stylistically, they matched me like a really good grappler. Short, compact grappler who'd fought Uriah Faber and Jens Pulver and stuff like that. And I dropped him quite early in the first round, and I thought I knocked him out. I started walking away like Mark Hunt, just walking up towards him, and so I've done this. And then he's just kind of looked at me and winked at me, and I was fuck. And then for whatever reason, I've no idea. He shot a double leg on us, and I sprawled. And as he straightened up, for some reason, I shot a double leg on him and took him down. And he's went for half guard right into a heel hook. It was absolutely beautiful. But so I flew home with a sore knee. But I think it was just because I started in Shotokan karate, getting to travel to Japan was a big thing. And I've said this before in other interviews and stuff, but I hadn't really been on a plane until I was 21 years old. I never went on family holidays and stuff as a kid. My family just never done it. So but I got to 21 and then started flying all over the world to get to fights and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool for that, but I should have definitely never shot that double leg on him for some weird reason.
Yeah.
Phenomenal stuff.
I
could listen to you two talk about your past fights and your experiences for hours. I could literally just sit here and listen to it. But one thing you mentioned, James, there about the weight cut being brutal, and I'm kind of interested in how you think MMA generally, but particularly at the top end of the game, your UFCs, your Bellators, your Cage Warriors, how they can improve their weight cutting protocols. Obviously, at certain points there's always issues with weight cuts and people passing out, and obviously in Asia there's been some more serious sort of things happening over the past sort of 4 or 5 years. But I'm interested in what you think would be the best way to go about sort of the weight cutting rules and regulations or guidelines.
I think more weight classes straight away would help, especially the gaps between like maybe the lightweight and welterweight and stuff like that. It's too big. I used to quite like the 1FC idea with the hydration tests and stuff like that, but I actually have a 1FC fighter in our gym now, a guy called Chris Shaw. He's a Thai boxer, and he was telling me about he fought Rodlek at one before COVID shut everyone down, and he was telling us that the weight cutting process is an absolute nightmare. He's like they'll test your hydration at certain points, and you need to have a couple of litres of water in you. So he was saying he was drinking water and then going to the sauna, and so you try to get a balance between passing the hydration test and bringing your weight down, and then again getting your
it just complicates it all
after the weight. So yeah, it sounded a nightmare, mate. He was saying he's like trying to hold in a pee. He's needing a pee. He's in a sauna, and he can't go outside and pee because he needs to sweat but keep this amount of fluid in his belly, and it sounded absolutely horrific. I know there was an incident where the last or 2 1FCs ago, I can't remember who it was that missed weight. Somebody fucked up the hydration test of that. It was John Wayne Parr, actually. He missed weight for the fight with Nicky Holskin, and it was the same thing. He couldn't get the hydration versus dehydration numbers right. So I'm not quite sure about that system anymore. I think it might be a wee bit more flawed than what people think. I don't, to be honest, I don't have an answer for it. I don't like the idea of guys weighing in as they walk to the cage. They'll still dehydrate themselves, which will cause trouble. Maybe the idea of them making a certain weight and only being allowed to be a certain percentage over the weight the next day at the weigh-in or whatever. But again, I've no idea, man.
It's so difficult, isn't it, to come up with a solution ultimately, because the nature of fighting, whether it's boxing, MMA, whatever, is even not even fighting. Professional sport is about getting every little advantage that you can possibly get in every way, in every legal way, and there's a reason why fighters don't fight at the weight they walk around at, and ultimately I think it's difficult then because fighters are always going to try and cut weight to be as big as possible at their chosen weight. But I just wanted to get your opinion on it. It's something which fascinates me, and hopefully, touch wood, we won't see too many issues, going forward with fighters, because it's one of my least favourite things about the fight game is seeing some of those fighters really struggling when they're trying to make weight. It is brutal. James, at higher level, you have some fighters at the very, very top of the sport. Some super talented guys, some champions, former champions, a really unbelievable talent pool, which I think says a lot about yourself and your fellow coaches. But what I want to ask you before we kind of get into some of those guys is, who have you got coming up? Like, who should we look out for in the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
We've got a few, to be honest. The one everybody seems to be talking about now is a kid called Mark Guin, he's 20 years old. He was ranked number 1 amateur in the UK for about a year and a half there at 70 kilos. So he would have turned pro last year if it wasn't for everyone being shut down. He was the guy I mentioned earlier as well. I think that the COVID thing's actually probably made him better because he's been involved in some really small camps with guys getting ready for big fights. So he's getting a lot more kind of attention. But he's kind of the main prospect now. To an extent where I'm trying not to talk about him too much because we're struggling to get him matched in Scotland already. And he needs a bit of time to transition from amateur to pro, and he's still a kid. He's still 20-year-old, 21-year-old, and needs time to come up through levels. It doesn't need chucked in with the best guys at lightweight in the UK immediately. He needs a wee bit of time to get more seasoning and stuff like that. There's another kid we have just turned 18 called Sean Clancy, who's 4-0. He stopped his 4 guys. He's been fighting adults since he was 16. We couldn't really. He's growing, so I think he's going to end up at light heavyweight. But I think trying to get him matched with other kids was a problem. So he's one as well. And then further up, we've got a couple younger pro guys, like a kid called Keir Harvey, really good featherweight. We'll get Luke Shanks back on track, hopefully next Cage Warriors, and hopefully he can get on beyond Cage Warriors, hopefully.
So you mentioned Luke. Obviously, we've had Luke on the show. I've had Luke on the channel as well. Big fans. Danny used to coach him. When he won the Cage Warriors title a few months back, was one of the most impressive and dominant 5-round victories I've ever seen. I truly believe it was one of the great British MMA performances. You do not see many 5-round fights be that one-sided. As a coach, when he won that title, apart when if you take the title out of it, obviously winning the title was superb. But like from a performance aspect, that must have been very satisfying as a coach.
To an extent, I still think it lacked a finish. I think you should be finishing guys. If you can dominate them that much, you should be able to finish them. So that's something that needs work, his ability to finish. And I think that's what separates the good European level fighters for the great ones. Like the UFC's got more likely to pick you up if you're finishing guys, like the way Masters was in Cage Warriors. If you're knocking guys dead or subbing them, then you become almost undeniable to these bigger shows. So the performance was good, man, against a very solid opponent for an excellent team. But you need a finish. It's the same way on the flip side what Jake done to Luke. Like if you have the ability to dominate someone that much but not finishing them, then you need to look at your ability to finish. And that sounds harsh because obviously Luke's a very good fighter. he probably doesn't want to hear that, but it's the truth. Like you're trying to get to a level above everybody else, and that's all it was missing really was the finish.
So you mentioned the Jake Hadley fight. Obviously, that was
Yep.
Luke's first defense of the title. Me and myself and Danny, we were really rooting for Luke. We were very excited about the fight. Jake Hadley's an exceptional fighter, but we felt like Luke had the tools to trouble him. So first and foremost, before the fight, did you feel that Luke had with his wrestling and his clinch work and stuff like that, did you feel like he had those tools to be able to give Jake trouble that perhaps he hadn't had elsewhere in previous fights?
Yeah, I thought I knew it was a hard fight. I knew for both guys it was going to be the best guys that each other had probably fought to that date. But I thought Luke would have. I thought, to be honest, Jake hadn't fought anybody that physical. He always looked like a much bigger guy against the guys he'd been beating. And I thought Luke could be able to bring that to the table, to be honest. And then there's a couple of things without getting into too much detail. Gameplay one, Luke just went right off script. Like he caught Jake with a hard punch in round one, kind of stiffened his legs a wee bit, and then just kind of chased a knockout after that. He was just trying to knock his head off. And another way, psychologically, Jake done a real good job on Luke with the trash talk, the shit at the weigh-ins, the social media stuff, and he pulled him right in to an extent where he got emotionally involved in the fight, which you can't be doing at that level, and that in turn pulled him away from the game plan as well, because he tried to get there and have a street fight with an exceptionally trained high-level opponent, and it played out the way it played out because of that. You see Luke's like 4 rounds down, round 5, goes out and tries a flying knee, gets double-legged, and his decision-making was poor, but it was completely clouded by emotion. And then there came a point in the fight where he was just so far behind, he'd lost 3 or 4 rounds that we were never going to get it back. And Hadley fought very smart, man, like really, really smart. He took nothing to do with Luke on his feet after the initial exchange. And then he didn't even take like a lot of risks chasing finishes where he maybe lost position and stuff like that. But he was exceptional that night, Jake Hadley. So massive credit to him and his team, and I think he'll going to do very good stuff in UFC. That kid, he's still a lot. He's young enough to develop and stuff. But those kind of things that highlighted fucked Luke up. To be honest, the emotional stuff with the smart talk. He needs to, like Danny was saying earlier with Lena Medios, just disassociate yourself. Cut it off, because it grows arms and legs, that shit, and it does affect performance. And then when he landed that one, I think it was a right hook he landed. He went after the knockout there, and it cost him dearly.
No, I can't agree with you more with all what you said. I mean, obviously you know Luke personally for some time now, and I've known him for many, many years now, and I know that if someone gets in his face, regardless of how big you are and you know what your record is, he's up for the fight. But that's just the problem. He treated it as a fight, literally on the street, and this is something that we spoke about and covered, didn't we, on the podcast side? That, you know, it just all strategy seemed to go out the window. And I said to Si that I bet you James Doolan was going nuts in the corner, because there's no way. I know what you're like to a point of a coach, of very strategical, tactical in your approach, of philosophical about how you train your fighters, and I know the way he went in there would not have been the way you was wanting it to go, and he just got too emotionally invested. I absolutely agree. Hook, line and sinker is a massive learning curve for Luke. I just hope that he takes it on board and makes appropriate adjustments, because I think he could have troubled Hadley just for the fact that he rocked him and dazed him. He should have just been playing it sure-footed. There was 5-minute rounds. It's a long time to keep finding those good shots that he got that first success with in that first round. You could have found that planting on Jake Hadley in rounds 2, 3, 4 and 5 if you wanted to, if he just played a little bit more patience, a little bit more footwork orientated, and stay away from that takedown. But you can't take anything away from Jake Hadley as well. You know, he performed excellently that night. He kept it all together. I'm sure he had a game plan, and He stuck to it and he pulled off a fantastic win. But I'm sure Luke will come back from it. Luke's very, very committed, and he's very, very hungry, and he really, really wants it. So I have no doubts he'll be coming back. But I'm glad you're dealing with him now, James, instead of me. I feel like I passed on an STI when he went with you.
I think I'd rather have an STI, to be honest.
Do you know what? When he left, whenever Luke's around, there's a population boom wherever he goes. So I imagine there's been an influx of pregnancies since he's come to Scotland.
Like, as a coach, is that frustrating? Like, in the moment, I'm kind of referring to, like, how frustrating is that? Like, and how do you deal with that as a coach? Like, if the game plan, and I don't necessarily mean just with like Luke on that night, but like just generally, if you've kind of worked on a strategy and a game plan before the fight, and then all of a sudden it just goes out the window and everything's being treated differently, like that's got to be frustrating. Like how is that for a coach, James?
It is frustrating, man, but that's kind of where a lot of times that's where you make your reputation, turning things around. There will be times like that fight where there's no point me being there that night. I could have sat through the back with a cup of tea, and the same shit would have played out. He wasn't listening in between the rounds, even though what I was saying was kind of right, and he apologised to me after, actually in the cage. Like, he knew himself, he'd get suckered into it and dragged into it, and it is frustrating, man, because you feel helpless. You're at the side of the cage, and I knew within about 3 or 4 minutes that's how that fight was going to play out. There was a slight chance Luke might have landed something on him and stuff like that, maybe knocked him out. But once it started going past 6 and 7 minutes, I was like, this isn't happening. And Luke never had the smarts or the discipline to change it. So it was frustrating. Eventually, I was just getting in the cage, and it was just a case of reiterating what I said before. Like, you need to change this up. You need to change it up, and it was just getting one ear and out the other. So it can be problematic. Thankfully, it doesn't happen that often, but it is a real thing.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Dan,
something else I've noticed through Facebook is that you read a lot. You read a hell of a lot. Something that I have done in the past and probably don't do as much of, as I should these days. But you read a lot of really quite impressionable books. Is that something that you've always done? You've always been a big reader, and it appears, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that you take on some of these books that you read to forge and shape your philosophy on the fight game from your coaching perspective.
Yeah, I think I copied that from my dad, to be honest, man. He used to read a lot.
Okay.
But the big thing it is with me is, you know how like some people can play Xbox or PlayStation and it switches their head off, or they watch films, and none of that works for me. Like, I can't sit still. The only thing that can make me kind of zone out is if I'm reading, and it doesn't work on my phone or a Kindle or a paper or a book. It sounds weird, but
right. I
need to have the book in my hand. I can't do audio books and shit, but I've just done it since I was a kid, man. It was just a habit, I think. I'm not sure, but I'm selective about what I read. A lot of obviously martial arts stuff, a lot of boxing autobiographies, coaches stuff, just the usual stuff like anything that can better performance and stuff, sports science books. But it definitely helps, I think. Well, I don't. I'm quite a slow learner with certain things, so I need to go through stuff at my own time. So, some guys can watch something on a video and pick stuff up. I need to either, if I read it, I'll get it, or if I can feel it, I can get it. So a lot of times I need, like, if there's a technique in jiu-jitsu, if I see it, I'll not get it, but if I get and rep it and get a feel for it, I'll kind of retain it a wee bit. But it's mostly the reading thing is just, it's the only way I can switch my brain off, to be honest, for everything else. It's the only way I can zone out. I wish I could play it. I've tried Xboxes, I've tried like binging on TV shows and shit like that, and it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's not a bad thing to be able to, pick up books. A lot of people have the other problem. I find whenever I read books, it just makes me really tired. It makes me zone out so much. I get sleepy. I don't know. It just seems to really tire me. I'm probably not the most fluent reader. I could be one of these people that can read a page and forget some parts of what I read, and it's as if I've never read it. I've been like that since school. We all learned in different ways, isn't it? Like, I never felt like I was perhaps a very, very good learner in class format, both in school and as a student of martial arts. I found I was always better when I had that one-to-one tuition. I don't know why. I just love it, and I still have one-to-ones now. I'll go to my boxing coach sporadically. When I have Kev Capel come down to do grading for the BJJ guys, because I'd rather bring other fresh black belts in, not just Kev Capel, other black belts. I always say, can you come an hour before, and we have a small group session or a one-to-one session. I like to ask questions about things, and I just seem to be able to retain the information that way. I guess we all got ways of knowing how we like. I guess at our sort of ages, James, we find out our weaknesses and know how to approach them, so they're not so weak after all. We got all our different ways and different methods at the end of the day.
I think the age thing's definitely a factor there as well. I think you've tried so many different things now. You're aware of what works.
Absolutely.
I'm the same as you. I like to get 1 or 2 hours a weekend with somebody else coaching me, just so I can switch off and still learn stuff as well, man. I'm the same as that.
Yeah.
Like, then everyone takes in stuff different ways, and some people need it repetitive. They need to go over it multiple times. Some people can read it or do it once, and then it's kind of there. It's very kind of interesting the way that people can take in their information, and also, like you say, switching off. Do you find, James, as well? Obviously, you're engrossed in fighting and MMA. Morning to night, day in, day out. Do you find it difficult to kind of switch off from MMA and fighting as well, like and just kind of get on with life and do something that you enjoy maybe away from that, or is your whole kind of life just MMA in some form?
It's pretty sad, but to be honest, it is, man. It's like it's an obsession to the point where it's cost me a lot of stuff before I was married. Before it cost me a relationship. It just gets in the way of everyone else because people can't understand how obsessed I'm with it, and people think I'm ignorant because I'm not into anything else. I can't have a conversation about pop music or what the fuck's on TV and stuff like that. It's the only thing I don't know if I'm on the spectrum of autism or something maybe, but it's the only thing that I think about. The only thing, spending time with my kids can make me switch off, but that always inadvertently goes back to play fighting for some reason. Or getting out and walking my dogs and stuff like that. That can help switch off a wee bit. But it's sad when I think about it, but it's pretty much the only thing I'm into. I've tried other things. I tried mountain biking. I've tried playing the guitar. You name it, I've tried it, and nothing else kind of captures my imagination the same way that does. And it's pretty much it just for the moment I wake up to the time I go to sleep, it's all I'm thinking about, and it causes me. Like my fiance will be like, she knows what I'm thinking about just looking across the room at me, and it causes problems. She's talking about something and I'm fucking thinking about how to take somebody down against a fence or something like that.
Yeah, because another thing I've noticed. Sorry, James. Another thing I've also noticed with your Facebook and stuff is that you are so on it, and as soon as there's a fight card up, you're putting your predictions down, and quite often a lot more than me and Si. You're getting a lot of them right. What is your fascination with that? I mean, okay, so we all like to make a prediction or so, but you really put it out on your social media where obviously it could be critiqued and you could be wrong, but you're so often right. I mean, what do you put that down to?
I don't know, man. Some of the fights can pick themselves, I think. See if it's like a right 50-50, I'll stay away from it more often than not. I've made a couple of mistakes before just betting on guys that I like. Like, I'll generally never bet against any of the British fighters, even if I think
Right.
or like they're up against it. I'll not touch that. But it's basically just going. It's past evidence. Like, have a look at who they've fought before, if they dealt with that style before, and then just making some kind of judgment, like how I could see it playing out, type of thing. I think I had a good run at the start. I think I picked about 3 or 4 years ago. I picked 5 or 6 every week, and got most of them right, and then I had a couple of dodgy ones. But some of it's just luck, I guess.
Yeah.
And on that note, actually, why don't we do some predictions for next week's UFC? It's Danny's favourite bit of the show.
Shit.
So I'll bring that up now. I think, Dan, you've done all right. I think I got the main event right, but I think other than that, I think you continued your good form for the last couple of weeks, really. After I had, let's be honest, I had been thrashing you week in, week out for probably about 3 years at least. But yeah,
3 years or a year and a half podcast. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yes. I am that good. So we'll have a look. It's a very interesting card actually next week. So you got first and foremost main event lightweight. It's not next week, it's the week after, by the way, but it's Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. I know, Danny, you're a big fan of Mr. Chandler. So you tell me. I do apologise. I've skipped ahead a week. Let me just check that. Yeah, I'm getting all ahead of myself. But you can tell me about that fight because I know you love Michael Chandler. There's another card.
I do, but I'm also really impressed with what Charles Oliveira's been doing recently. So, trying to predict a win on that one's really, really hard. I thought Chandler would have had a whole lot harder time against Dan Hooker than he did. Giving away that height and reach advantage, and that Hooker likes to play on the outside and play long. He soon found a way in, didn't he? And with huge consequence for Dan Hooker. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Chandler on this one, just because he's been showing the form. But it's such a hard one to predict. It really is. Really is hard.
Yeah, so the reason I got confused about the May 8th, 9th card is because they've only announced one fight and they have not announced anything else. So what we will do is we'll have a look at the UFC 262 card from the next week. Which way do you see that one going, James, between Oliveira and Michael Chandler? It's a big fight.
It's a great fight, man. I'm an Oliveira fan, but I think Chandler will probably take that as well. The thing that makes me think that is basically how Paul Felder dealt with Chandler. With Oliveira, sorry. I can see Chandler ended up on top of him, just dropping elbows on him for the guard, similar to how Felder stopped him. I think I just get the impression Charles Oliveira's going to be one of the really exceptional fighters who just never quite makes it, never gets to the belt. And I hope I'm wrong because I really like the guy. I love watching him play off his back, and his striking's got so much better recently. But what Danny hit on there with Chandler's UFC debut was incredible. What he done to Dan Hooker, and I can see him. He seems to be tailor made for tall guys, the way his overhands and stuff like that. And I'd probably take Chandler to beat Oliveira, I think.
Yeah, I'm a massive Dan Hooker fan as well, and he just outclassed him, really did. The co-main event for that evening is what I would describe, Danny, as on paper at least a banger. Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Call that one, my friend.
Yeah, I can't bet against Leon Edwards.
No,
this guy has got good fight IQ. He makes good decisions so often. Nate Diaz, Nate Diaz can be a problem for anyone, but he has got weaknesses in his game. He's not the best wrestler in the world, and Leon Edwards has showed that he can take people down, if he so chooses to, even if they're caliber wrestlers themselves. I just think Leon Edwards is just too good all round. I think the only way Edwards could get in trouble is if he got caught in any way. Diaz has obviously got the cardio to keep pouring onto you. And the only other situation really is him staying on the ground too long, messing around on the ground with someone like Nate. But Leon West was way too smart. Like I say, he makes good decisions practically at all times in his recent appearances in UFC. I just think he's going to be too much for Nate. I really do.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating fight. And what's that famous saying? If they won't give you respect, then you have to take it.
Yeah.
And I do feel like Leon Edwards is at that point. We've talked about what we perceive, Danny, I think it's fair to say, is like maybe a little bit of disrespect thrown Leon Edwards' way by the UFC and maybe some parts of the media. And if he was able to pull off a big win against Nate Diaz with a possible finish as well, like I think he's going to get that respect that he so deserves. But it's going to be a fight and a half. James, sorry, Dan, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, quite a few of my guys go off training other places as well, which I've always been open to do, and they get to see Leon Edwards train, and some of them get to briefly spar with him in specific sparring settings, and they said this guy is an absolute talent. They see him putting number on people 2 weight divisions above himself. So he's a physical dude. He's an intelligent dude. He's training right. He fights smart. He's got the whole package. He really has. He could take it all the way. I really believe that.
Yeah, Jake Hadley and Paddy Pimblett both spoke very highly of him, didn't they, when they came on the show? So it'll be interesting to see which way this one goes. James, how do you see Diaz and Edwards going? And am I setting myself up for disappointment by anticipating a banger?
I don't think it will be a banger. I think Leon will make light work in Nate Diaz.
Okay.
I think both the Diaz brothers are overrated. I think on the flip side of that, I think Leon's massively underrated. I think he's an exceptional talent. Both of the Diaz brothers are fighting name's like an IQ test. If you're half smart, you should be able to beat them. And the way Masvidal done Nate Diaz in his last fight, I can see Leon doing that, but more effective. I think he'll stop him. I think he's going to kick his legs to bits. I think he's been on the ground with guys like Gunnar Nelson and stuff like that and been very comfortable. He's been hanging with better level competition, even as far back as Vincenzo Luque and stuff like that. The dangerous striker. He knows what he's going to get off in Nate Diaz. It's boxing. He's not got any kicks. He's not going to knee you. He's not going to shoot. He's going to box into a clinch and maybe take it down there. More often than not, it's him getting took down. It's a really very not primitive, but it's an easy skill set to prep for. And I think Leon Edwards he's so disciplined, and Danny hit on it with the fight IQ thing is his biggest asset. And I think that's what gets him the win. I'll be surprised if it goes 4 rounds. It's a 5-round co-main event, which is cool. And I think that'll give him the big name on his record that probably gets him Usman next, I think, as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's going to be a good. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. Next up was Tony Ferguson versus Beneil Dariush. Danny, I'm a big fan of Beneil Dariush. Tony Ferguson hasn't looked himself of recently, last couple of fights. But I really like Dariush. I'm looking forward to this one as well. But how do you see it going, Danny?
Well, yeah, Ferguson hasn't been himself, and it has been such a shame. He was so creative in moments in previous fights, but really has just. I don't know whether it's a case of that he's not himself or just the caliber of. These fighters are just getting of such that he's just getting found out now. And Dariush, he does nothing but impress me. Someone that never looked comfortable or never looked very coordinated on his feet, and still don't on the highest level spectrum, but he always seems to get good things done with the striking. He gets hold of people, he puts people down. He just keeps getting results, and I think that's hard to bet against, really. So if you're going to go on, really the form of the fighters, I'm going to have to go for Dariush.
Shout, mate. James, how do you see that one going?
I've also got Beneil to win that. I'm a massive fan of his. When Stevie fought Michael Johnson, Beneil had fought Michael Johnson before and actually came to us in the hotel and had been giving us a wee bit of advice about the fight with Michael Johnson. And he was just a very, very nice guy, man. Like, really, really nice guy. outside the cage, but then when he gets in there, he's absolutely brilliant. I think he was on a good run before, and then he ran into, was it Hernandez? I think, or that took a short notice fight with him and beat him. Kind of was a wee bump in the road for him, but then since he's came back, he's looked incredible. He looks, every time he goes out there, he looks better and better. And I think he's carrying that momentum into this fight, whereas Tony just looks like he's fell off. Like he's went for the worst fight in the division, potentially for anybody, to a guy who's struggling. And I don't know if it's a physical or a mental thing. I know he's been messing about with different camps and stuff. For what I hear, he's a hard guy to coach. I think he runs his own shit. We had one of my students, Cal Murray's a 10th Planet black belt under Jeremy Fields, who's part of Tony's camp. And I think the guys get quite frustrated with Tony. He decides what's happening, when it's happening and stuff like that. And I think the guy does train very hard, but I don't think he's made any adjustments based on his losses. And I think the momentum that Dariush is carrying now, the confidence should just carry him through. I think the way Tony looked against Charles Oliveira, he was in his preferred spots. He was on the ground where he wants to be, and get shut down with solid fundamental jiu-jitsu. And Dariush is a brilliant grappler on the ground, man.
Yes, he is indeed. I'm like I say, I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm just going to pick two other fights just to quickly talk about from the same card. So we got Caitlin Chikagian versus Vivian Araujo. Danny, give me a prediction for that one.
Oh, another very difficult one. I'm going to go Chikagian.
Yeah,
that's another tricky one.
I like Caitlin. She's I thought she's looked pretty good on the whole in the last sort of year to 18 months. She's a good fighter. I always enjoy watching her fight, even if she sometimes isn't always consistent. James, what about you for that one?
I'll go with Caitlin's points, probably split decision. Like a lot of her fights, she'll probably just outland the other girl. She's pretty good at moving and just accumulating points, I think. So I think that.
Cool. And the last one I want to ask you guys about is a prelim fight, which is quite wild to me, but there we go. Is Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian. Yeah, this one fascinates me, I gotta say. Danny, what you got?
Hermansson, did he just lost on his last one, didn't he?
I believe he did recently, didn't he?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I'll have a quick look now, but I'm pretty sure he lost recently, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm going to go him to come back from it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hermansson's ranked 7, Shabazian's ranked 10. Hermansson lost to Vettori in December 2020.
Right, yeah.
What about you, James? You got Hermansson or you going Shabazian?
That's a good fight. I think maybe going on that Vettori fight, I'll go with Edmund. I think. Who did he lose to?
Hermansson lost to Vettori, and Shabazian lost to. Let me just bring it up. Because he was expected to win, wasn't he? I think, if memory serves.
Was it
Derek Brunson? He lost to in August last year via a TKO after 28. That was right. It was a quick one. It was like 28 seconds. But yeah, he's be an interesting one, that fight. I think Hermansson and Shabazian.
Yeah.
Who did you say you've got, James? Sorry.
I think I'll go with Shabazian. I think he's still young, that kid. I think he's like 22, 23. I think he'll be looking to bounce back. Real dynamic striker. I think I'll go with him.
Yeah. Manson, though, he's got incredible cardio, though, and he just keeps ploughing forward. So I'm hoping that will carry him through.
Yeah.
We shall see.
He might sub him. He might get a submission as well, Hermansson.
Yeah.
It's going to be absolutely cracking card that day. The last couple of pay-per-view events the UFC have put on, the depth of the card has been unbelievable. Like truly, like it's just incredible stuff. so deep. Like some of the prelim fights which they've had have been remarkable. Really, when you think of years gone by, that wasn't always the case. But okay. So myself and Danny are now we're going to talk UFC fight night from last night. But James, I got to say, I really thoroughly enjoyed talking to you this evening. I realised we kept you about 10 minutes longer than we said we were going to, and I appreciate your time and everything. Truly, thoroughly enjoyed it, my friend, and thank you for your time.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having us on, guys.
Yeah, no, and also big thanks from myself as well, James. Obviously, we've touched and to talk in terms on one of the Cage Warriors shows, and we've now been in touch on Facebook, and now we've done a podcast together, and as well on your podcast that you run. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
It's been really, really good to mingle with someone that I respected as a fighter and also as a world-class coach. And I'm sure we'll be rubbing shoulders again, and maybe we'll do a podcast again sometime in the near future.
Yeah, man. I'll see you in London actually at next Cage Warriors.
That's right. Yeah.
Catch
No,
you there.
good stuff. Cheers, James. Good luck, buddy.
Cheers, James. Thanks for your time, mate.
Bye, guys.
James Doolan there, another top level guest, mate. Another top level coach as well. Really enjoying these guests, mate. And got a couple of good little suggestions actually. For next
we've
week,
had
which
some
we'll,
corkers.
Discuss next week because I've been doing a little bit of negotiating and jiggling and wiggling behind the scenes.
Sounds good.
I'll tell you afterwards. But going well, mate. It's always enjoyable. But let's get into it. Let's finish this off with 20 minutes on last night's UFC. It was wasn't necessarily like jam packed with what you would perceive as the big names, but overall I thought it was a very enjoyable card, mate. I gotta say.
Yeah. I enjoyed the fights.
Really, really enjoyed it. The one thing I was going to ask you and James about was, and it's the only bit of news I really wanted to touch on. So there's news today that Zabit Makhmedsharaipov is considering walking away from the UFC.
Oh, wow.
He's 30 years old, and basically his reasoning is, obviously fighting takes a lot out of him. He's obviously based in sort of the Russian part of the world where they train very, very hard, very, very physically. And that does take wear and tear on the body, but he is 30. His record is he's lost once in 19 fights. He's only won 5 of those by decision, by the way, so he's by no means a boring fighter to watch. He's won 6 by knockout, 7 by submission, 5 by decision. Last beat Kelvin Kattar by a decision. He beat Jeremy Stevens by decision. Beat, if you remember, he beat on UFC 228. He beat Brandon Davis via a Sulov stretch submission.
Yeah, they tied him right up in a knock.
Yeah, and he also beat Shimon Moraes via an anaconda choke. Like, this guy he's a top level fighter, and by all accounts, from what this news report says, and it stems from an Instagram post from a Russian media person, but it seems to have come from his camp.
Right.
They didn't like he was scheduled to fight Yair Rodriguez on the 29th of August last year. Rodriguez pulled out quite late in the day. I don't think that was very popular, but they did say at the time that they'd fight anyone. They just want a fight, and he has been very vocal in that. He said I want top level fighters. I want to fight. I want to beat people up. I want to get the belt. No one will fight him. And I think what probably has pushed him over the edge is the 26th of April just gone. So like last week, the UFC removed him from the rankings. He was ranked 3rd, and their reason was inactivity.
Oh,
and I think,
but that's frustrating.
I think like if you can't get a fight because no one will fight you, I think that's very harsh to remove him for inactivity.
Yeah.
And it's almost like what they kind of were leaning towards with Leon Edwards, wasn't it? They were starting to make that similar threat. I feel for him because he is He's a top level fighter, mate. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, there was still some really interesting matchups that he could have been involved with, and I think he's someone that could possibly, with his height, go up a weight as well and challenge over two divisions.
I gotta say, mate, I think why isn't he getting a title fight?
Yeah,
Basically,
absolutely.
do you know what I mean?
It's craziness.
Puzzling. They'd be mad if they let him go without a fight. You know, they should.
Yeah.
They should do everything they can to keep him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we had last night. We started off the main card with Merab Dishvali defeating Cody Stamen. A pretty dominant performance, this one, mate.
Yeah. It was. It was. I mean, Stamen did well, but everything that he did well, Davaleshi just did better. He just had so much energy back. He just gets so fit, this guy. He can wrestle. He can strike somewhat. I mean, it's not always the most beautiful setup of striking, but he just seems to get his hands and his legs in the right place at the right time. So physically strong as well. And Stateman's strong. He's a really short, stocky dude. But Davaleshi just looked good all round. He just looked slightly better in every area. And it left poor Cody just looking short in all departments. Although, still, like I say, I will want to maintain that Stamen still performed pretty good. But Davaleshi just performed better, pretty much just everywhere. Very, very impressive.
It was. I thought that's the word I would use, is impressive.
Yeah.
I think the one thing Merab lacks is that like the finish. Like he doesn't always finish a lot of fights. That's the one thing which maybe holds him back from maybe getting the hype of some other people, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, in that weight division, the knockouts are not so frequent because they're so tiny. And, they're like flies landing on your steak during a hot day. You know, they're really super quick on their feet. So it must be hard to sort of like nail down any solid punch that's going to knock anyone off their feet in that weight division. But yeah, he perhaps lacks a little bit of the ability of control into submissions on the ground, possibly. But like I say, in that weight division, I don't expect to see as many finishes. They do come and they do come about, but not very often. So I never expect it in any extraordinary way. But still, he's going to be a hard customer for most people to beat because he's pretty proficient and full of energy in all areas. He's going to be a difficult proposition. Be interesting to see how he's going to progress.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Next up was Sean Strickland, ranked 15, defeated Christoph Jotko via unanimous decision. I haven't seen this one. This is the one fight I haven't seen.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, it was Strickland pretty much looking like the hunter, and poor Jotko looking like he was the hunted. Although Jotko was doing well, fighting off his back foot, but it was a little bit like how Modestus was doing in his last performance, fighting on the outside of the cage. It looked like he was throwing his punches and kicks and knees through having to fight the ever closing in Strickland. Strickland, although at times I wasn't in favour of the way he was choosing to defend against Jacob's advancements, he was sometimes leaning back. Look at it, comes a bit. It was almost done with pure confidence and cockiness, like it. Okay, I don't have to cover up too spectacularly, and just immediately went on the front foot again. And Strickland, basically outworked Jotko throughout all 3 rounds. Really, looked really, really good.
Yeah, I just thought it was good stuff. I just watching it back now a little bit. Sean Strickland was good.
Yeah.
Next up we had Ian Kutulaba versus Dustin Jacoby. Ended in a split draw, 29-28, 28-29, 28-28. Now this one had a bit of a needle to it. They had a bit of shoving match in the weights. The weigh-in and the face-offs before the event. What did you make of the fight, though? Really good fight.
Kalubo was really given the stare down. He wanted to be there and do some damage to Jacoby. But Jacoby performed very, very well, but not in the first round at all. Jacoby got out-wrestled. He got out-grappled to a point. He took a lot of damage from Kalubo, and I believe that would have been scored as a 10-8 round. It was that dominant. But Kalubo was having to put a lot of energy into doing that work. And that's all very well. getting ahead, but you have to have that cardio to therefore stay ahead. And what you noticed with Cataleba was in that second and third round began to slow up. Now he dig deep. It wasn't a case that he got tired and his work rate dropped off sporadically. He was still trying to trade back, but become a lot more ineffective. Suddenly those takedowns weren't available to him in any way that he could keep it there. And Jacoby was getting back to the feet and really pouring back onto Kotobi. And it was really, really good from both performance perspectives, to be honest. But Jacoby did great. I felt like he did win rounds 2 and 3, although they were close. He was winning them. He was outpointing Cataleba as far as I was concerned. Was crisper, looking more energetic, which made me and possibly the judges cast their eye on his work rate rather than Catalobi. Catalobi looked like he was trying to get to the end of the finish line and hope that he was going to stay ahead from that first round that he had put upon Jacoby. But yeah, it ended up being a draw, and I don't think that was out of place at all for a draw, to be honest. That's a fight that I would like to see run back again. But it looked like at the end they were both very friendly with each other. It looked like whatever needle was going on between them, it looks like they put it to bed after that fight. They felt like a tie was a good result from both.
Yeah, and I think it's just part and parcel of it, isn't it? It's kind of one of those things.
It's part of the game, man. It's part of the game. I like it when it's done. When it's tasteful. Okay, a bit of pushing and shoving is okay, but I think if punches and kicks flying, perhaps is becoming distasteful. And there's also tasteful criticisms and winding up of each other and distasteful variations. But they seem all right. But like I say, that fight was exciting enough for me to show interest in seeing that being run by, so we have a defining winner.
Yeah, and that's not always the case, is it? When you get a draw or one where there's people who are getting at each other, you don't always want to re-see it. Next up was Giga Jakadze, ranked number 14, defeated Cub Swanson, ranked number 15. What a finish this one. Really, the start of 2 great finishes to the card. But we talk about these body shots. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Jakadze, look, he's rangy, explosive, precise. He doesn't do it how so often many other good strikers do, where they push you back by trying to invade the pocket. He's everything at range, but it's with a lot of intent. It really is, and precision. And he was just precise for the liver kick. It was beautiful. And Cub Swanson, to his credit, was kind of like doing the right type of thing. He was trying to push in close, trying to be explosive, definitely doing the right sort of things to make himself relevant in the fight, but just got caught. And that's the thing with Kachadze, he's precision orientated. It was early on in a round, and when you're getting hit to the liver or to the jaw by this guy, it is going to do some devastating damage. And yeah, he was done for. Perhaps took some unnecessary further damage on the ground, but nothing too consequential to his health or anything like that. But yeah, very, very impressive. This guy is looking pretty real deal in that division now. Pretty real deal.
Indeed, mate. I just these body shots, mate. These body shots, they're killers. And I see some people sometimes saying, "Oh, how can you go down as a professional fighter from a kick to the stomach?" And I'm like, mate, those liver kicks, the punch hitter, is brutal.
Look, a normal body shot on its own is horrendous. It's suffocating. It's hard to explain. You have to experience it to know. But a liver kick or a liver punch, well placed, it literally just stops you in your tracks. It makes you not be able to draw in air. It just stops you. It's horrendous feeling. Very, very, very strange sensation. But again, I can't say it enough. You have to experience it to know it. It's like when you see someone take a leg kick, whether it be on the shin or the thigh, and people are really shocked at how they're suddenly limping or not able to function properly. Trust me, get a top fighter who's got a kicking background to kick you in the leg. You'll know everything that it's all about, and you won't be criticising anyone that starts limping or falling to their ass after receiving a nasty leg kick. Body kicks and leg kicks are just disastrous in a fight because they're so hard to recover from. When you get rocked and knocked dizzy, unless they put you away in a proper manner, you can shake off the cobweb, so to speak, and come back fighting through and pull off wins. But normally when been hurt to the body or hurt to the legs, it's normally a slippery slope to defeat.
Yeah, you can't dispute it, mate. It's just, look, I've never been a fighter, but I've spoken to a lot of fighters and coaches and media people, and they all say the same thing. The liver kick is brutal as a well placed liver kick with power is as brutal as any knockout or any shot on the jaw or right on the button, anything like that.
No, the world stops honestly when you get hit. The world stops.
Now, the main event was Dominic Reyes making his return to the cage versus Jiri Prochazka. Now, mate, you don't see many finishes like this, do you?
No, you don't. And it wasn't even the finish that was just impressive with this. It was both how they was performing against each other. They was quite often in opposite stances. I don't know how to just pronounce it. I'm just going to shoot Jury. Yeah, but I'm just going to say Jury. We know what Jury does, and we know how he comes about, but he's normally been so dominant in his recent performances. He puts people away pretty damn quick. He's got that 80-inch reach as well, which is pretty huge.
So it's massive, isn't it?
But it was a battle of the cross hands. Jury was landing his cross hand. Reyes was landing his cross hand. They both hurt each other on numerous occasions, but they were both just going at it toe to toe. But for me, Jury was just pushing forward and a little bit more believing on what he was throwing at Reyes, rather than Reyes believing in what he was doing to Jury. I think Reyes had the right idea when he started incorporating some takedowns. I think a lot of Jury's grappling has not been tested. I think there are some holes there, but they're not being utilised by the opponents that are facing him. Look, this guy can bang. Yes, he's open to being hit as well, but do you really want to trade with a guy that seems to be able to get stoppage after stoppage? I don't think it's a good policy to trade with him, although there is a target there for the taking. And he did get rocked as well. We have to remind ourselves of that. But I think the success really could have come for Reyes if he kept on trying to utilise the takedown. And at least then that way the threat of the takedown would perhaps stop Jury coming on as an onslaught like he did, because that's eventually what got him the win. As the rounds progressed, the pressure really got to Reyes, and he started not seeing the flamboyant combinations coming at him. And he threw two elbows, didn't he? He threw a splicing cross elbow into a back elbow. And my God, I see this performed in a tasteful way by Jordan Vasenic. He very, very, very good with his elbows, and he's able to throw them in a way where obviously he's not landing on anyone, because obviously it'll cut people to pieces, but he does it very, very well. You've got to remember he's a featherweight, so he's going to be very well coordinated, but to see guys of that weight perform it so fluid as we saw, it's just beautiful. It really was. But the whole fight was exciting, wasn't it? You just knew someone was going to drop. They just was not backing down from each other. Lovely to see. Jury's real deal now. I mean, crikey, what's his rank now? He must be really trundling up the ranks now.
So he's right. He was ranked 5, and Reyes was ranked 3 before this.
Yeah, so he's getting right up there.
Oh yeah, mate. And what do you know? What I really liked about it was the timing. So what he hit the first shot, and he hit the second shot, and he sort of, as he hit that second right elbow, he sort of span, with his follow through, and he knew that Reyes was rocked, and he just also naturally spun back around, around in a circle with that big left elbow, and just caught him nice on the
Yeah. Well, look, when you're throwing a cross elbow like he did, you quite often have to step through with it to make it reach. And that's why the natural thing is to then spin and turn and throw your cross back elbow like he did. It was really nice to see. But I saw some good grappling as well from Jury.
Yeah,
when he was on top of Reyes, he was not mucking around with jiu-jitsu skills too much. He was holding that top side rear position and just throwing strikes. He was treating the grappling as proper MMA, as I would say, or full-on MMA. He was just getting that top position to throw shots. He wasn't trying to pass guard. He didn't do anything. He didn't try and put the hooks in particular. He just wanted to hit, strike, and do damage. And that's what he does when he fights. From the time that the bell goes, he's chasing down to throw shots, and he doesn't seem to be showing any fear of potential repercussions of being so open. He just wants to get off his damage and his damage only. And look, as long as it keeps getting him wins, he's going to keep doing what he does, and it makes good viewership. I enjoy watching him as a fan. I enjoy watching his fights, no matter what, because look, he's always going to put on an amazing performance. And like James Doolan was saying, some fighters, they just keep getting decision wins. They can get overlooked and they don't get their ticket to UFC. There's no wonder this guy got his ticket to UFC. This guy just tries to stop everyone every minute of every round. He really has impressed me of late.
Yeah, and look, it's just one of those, isn't it, whereby, like, he's got it. Where's he go next? He's got to be looking towards that title. Got to be. Just because of where he was, and the impression of the finish. Dominic Reyes is, I feel for him a bit, because there was talk of, retirement. Is it coming towards the end of his career, and all the usual stuff that you get with fighters once they get to a certain age, and particularly when they have time out and they do a lot of commentating. It's natural to have those questions, and I feel for him because he looked quite sharp, and
he was not looking bad, but he was having to deal with a lot of forward pressure, and he was giving it back. He was in there to win it completely through start to finish up until he got knocked out. He was in there to win it himself. He knew he had his opportunities there, but unfortunately the opportunities were one too many against him, and he got finished, unfortunately. There was another fight that I wanted to mention as well. One of Modestus' old opponents that he fought in UFC, the first one where he knocked him out in the wrestling, he went down a weight, which I think was a good call. I'm probably going to butcher his name here. That Andreas Michailidis. He fought that KB Belhar. I'm probably butchering his name. But that Belhar's got, even though he's come down a weight, that guy's tall. I think a good 3 or 4 inches height advantage. But Andreas performed excellent. He really, really did. He was very, very calm. He exploded, and when he exploded, he got in really, really close and really unloaded to a point where I thought he might have overcooked himself, but he didn't. He actually paced himself very, very well. He was very, very active in the first round, even scoring a takedown and having some back control. In the second round, slowed down a little bit, but again would still go on these big flurries, fermenting that round in his favour. And again in that third round, again a little bit slower paced, but he still went off like a firecracker as and when he needed to consolidate that round. That Belhar is a really good. I think he's a taekwondo practitioner, very, very long rangey, but it looked like everything that he was throwing out, he was kicking at the legs a lot, but landing with his foot. And that amount of kicks that he was landing on Andreas should have been doing some damage, and there weren't barely any marks on his legs. It wasn't bothering him at all, and he kept trudging forward. But I was really impressed with him, looking really, really good. I'm glad he's down at middleweight. I think that's where he belongs. I think light heavy is just too damn small. I just wanted to say that.
In his opinion, he made the right decision then for you, mate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was too small for light heavy. And he had a very, very impressive performance. So, well done on him. He goes to 13-4. He'll start getting himself back into some form of contention to be in that top 15.
Yeah, I wish more fighters would consider a change in weight class sometimes when things aren't going their way. It sometimes feels like some fighters, they almost treat it as like a last resort when things aren't going their way. But actually, I think it can be a good way to rejig your career, or just to make things go back in your favour. Like, if you're a bit big or a bit small for your weight class, why wouldn't you want to investigate or look into would I be better suited for a weight up or a weight down?
Yeah,
I wish more fighters would do it, but there we go. Danny, another excellent, fun, interesting show, mate. I really enjoyed it again.
It's been good. We've really been spoiling ourselves the last few weeks, but
now, mate.
I have no doubts we'll be pulling some other really good guests in. I have no doubt about that.
Indeed, mate. And we've also been speaking to some people, doing some wheeling and some dealing. And if
sound like my dad.
If you want the best body grooming tools in the game, then you can visit smoothmyballs.com.
What?
And for 15% off all your various shaving needs. They've got all sorts. They've got deodorants and trimmers, hedge trimmer 4.0 or whatever it is. Unbelievable stuff. But if you use the code ACE Balls, you not only get 15% off but we also get a little cut. So support us by supporting our brand partners. SmoothMyBalls.com.
Excellent. That's brilliant.
There you go. Do it. They got some
Shall I-
good stuff.
I
They
should
sent me
I
a
should
review kit. So
Right, yeah, I was going to say, I should
I'll let you know
demonstrate.
how that goes. But I'll
I'm
let
happy
you
to
know
do live
everything good.
demonstration. Let me do a live demonstration. So.
Yeah, you get me demonetized in seconds. Danny's balls. But yeah, no, it's it's what it is. If people, let's not beat around the bush. People beat around the bush. Do you see what I did there? People, people like to groom and keep their bush in
Tidy
nice
order.
Yeah. So why not? And you get 15% off if you order and use that code. And they send A.C.E Podcast Nation a little cut of it as well to support us. So
That's just superb.
superb stuff indeed, my friend. Danny, as always, it is my pleasure to have been joined by yourself and, of course, James Doolan. I'm going to try and put some clips out this week. It's just difficult. I just don't have the time. I need an intern to make clips and stuff. But as the COVID things restrictions and stuff lifted, I'm hoping to record some studio shows at some point as well. So you never know. We might see if we can work something out for the old Danny Batten Fight Show as well. Have a little one in a studio. But I'll certainly be travelling to Northampton at some point in the near future. I can tell you that much. In the meantime, guys, go on.
No, I was going to say that would be good, and obviously it's always been in my intention to get your way. Wales has many lovely, beautiful points that I would love to go and visit anyway, and if I could take it and finally meet you face to face, that would be great as well.
Spot on, mate. Come to sunny Wales. It's God's country. Guys, it's a pleasure as always. Spread the word about the Danny Batten Fight Show. Best guests in the game. Best analysis from the legend in the game. Bid you farewell. Be good. Have a good week. See you later.
Defending champion.